new with this area is obviously drivers have never used this particular entry point before. So certainly some of them are a little bit more intuitive, the slip ramp ones. Some of the new entry and exit points, though, there's like the brand new one at Fairfax County Parkway. That may require a little bit more homework on the part of drivers to check out the interchange maps, let's say, for example. But also we've got those easy pass only pavement markings down, and those will be in place in front of the entry points when we actually open these. So trying to take some of those lessons learned definitely and apply them to the 95 express lanes.
Well, and even more directly, obviously the issue at the beginning was that on the Springfield side, you could stay in a lane and not realize you're about to enter the express lanes. In this case, there's
a more conscious movement. Yeah, you've got to merge over one to the left to get in that entry point.
I mean, it almost reminds me of like a rest stop if I were going, on 95.
Similar, yeah, I'd say for the rest stops that are off, because there's got to be a lane change usually that takes place. You're not going to enter that destination.
I'm thinking of the ones the ones in Maryland where they're in the middle of the road.
Oh, okay,
yeah. And so you enter on the left lane, you can enter on both sides, but you have to, it says this goes to the rest stop.
Yeah,
it kind of looks similar back there.
Yeah.
Do you guys? Are you guys confident that the Garrisonville entrance back there there won't be that same level of confusion where you have as many accidents and as many people saying, "Oops, I got into the lanes"?
Well, it's hard to say.
Not that won't happen, but not as much.
It's honestly, it's hard to say. I mean, we've taken some lessons learned, applied them so the pavement markings are there, and that drivers are hopefully more aware that it is an entry point to the system. But of course, the big message I think for drivers that we want them to understand when the 95 express lanes open is that all these new rules of the road are in effect. That you're going to have to pay a toll 24/7 if you're by yourself or with one passenger. That you have an easy pass, because even though looking at it from the one side, you've got that actual movement into the lanes. How do I actually maneuver my car into the lanes? But you've also got to process sort of those new rules of the road. So for drivers, it's kind of a two-part, step to prepare, if you will. You've got to not only know how to get on and how to get off, but you want to be aware of those rules. Because, you might be the driver who says, okay, I know where that entry point is. I'm going to get on right there in Stafford County going north, just north of Garrisonville Road. But then if you're not prepared when the road opens and you see the sign, wait, what did that say? Easy pass? Oh, shoot, I don't have an easy pass. What are the rules again? You can still have that sort of mental processing of the rules that can still lead to unsafe behavior.
Now, when we were back there in the entrance, there was the dynamic sign on the main part. Will that list the toll prices as you enter?
That's right. So before each entry point, you'll have a minimum of 2 dynamic signs. You'll have the 2 signs. If there are only 2 signs, they're going to tell you the toll prices. In some cases, we actually have 3 signs. So what the drivers will see is actually in between those dynamic pricing signs, they might see an informational sign that can be used to communicate the rules of the road. The basic messages that we even have up today on 495 to indicate that it's an entry point to the lanes, remind drivers that it's 2-axle vehicles only, if it's cold outside, if there's icy conditions, any messages like that can go up on those advisory dynamic message signs. So you'll either see those 2 pricing signs, or you'll see a couple pricing signs and a dynamic message sign. And sometimes, those dynamic message signs might be blank.
Now, the 2 things I've noticed so far, one, I haven't seen any gantries yet so far. So when I ask about that, are there not going to be gantries in this portion we're driving right now?
There's definitely going to be one. The gantries are placed just so, for us to ensure that we know where you got on and where you got off. So if you think about where we're at right now in the project, there hasn't been another entry point. So I'm sure shortly here we'll see a gantry, and when we pass under that gantry, what our system will do is to say, okay, we first saw them at this gantry, that means they got on back there just north of Route 610. So there's not more gantries than we need. there's enough to be able to know where you got on and where you got off. But in stretches like this, where there's really only one option to get on, you're not going to see another one of those gantries until we get closer to another opportunity to get on from the regular lanes.
And related to that, the second thing I've noticed is that for the first couple of exits on that side, there aren't complementary exits on this side. So the thought is, if I'm just going from 60, from Garrisonville Road to the Quantico exit here, there's really never going to be an issue where I need to not use the main lane, so we don't need an exit on the side for just the intra-Stafford trips.
Oh yeah, it's kind of goes back to the need of where to put the entry and exit points, and obviously you're limited in some areas in terms of right of way and whether or not you can even have access points to and from the lanes. But for drivers, that's a good point. Just like 495, it's still a limited access highway. You don't want to say, okay, well, I've got my entry point figured out. I'm going to get on the 95 express lanes here, and I'll get off, and then I'll go to my regular triangle exit, which, as we just saw, isn't an option. So it's still, you want to figure out where you can get on, where you can get off, and obviously a lot of drivers are going to be looking to exit back to the regular lanes on 95, and from those regular lanes, take an exit to an arterial road. So you've got to figure out if that's a possibility based on the route that you want to take. So there's still homework involved, especially for this 9-mile segment. No one's used this stretch of road before. They haven't thought about it. No one's had to say, can I go to 619 from that new entry point on the 95 express line?
In this case, the answer is no.
Correct. Yeah, the answer is no. So it's about doing the homework, and there's access maps on our website. We constantly hear from drivers, I didn't know that resource was available to me. So we, again, want everyone to visit 95expresslanes.com, plan the basics of your trip, where you're going to get on, where you're going to get off, especially for new entry and access points and lanes.
So, and we'll see this obviously, but the first exit's going to be where, and then part two of that would be how does the determination get made on which places get exit points and entrance ramps and which ones don't?
Yeah, I'll pull up my access map here in a second. I'm trying to think of exactly where the first one is.
We'll see that, so that's not a big deal. Why don't we just handle the other part? How the decisions are made to decide this place gets an exit on the limited access highway and this one doesn't.
Yeah, some of it has to do with space in the corridor. So you have to have enough room to actually put in those slip ramps to and from the lanes. You saw from the entry point back there's actually a bit of space required to ensure that there's a safe merge either onto the express lanes or back onto the regular lanes. Some of it has to do with traffic patterns and traffic volumes. If there's not sufficient demand, or if we didn't think there would be sufficient demand, that can impact a decision on whether or not to add an entry or exit point.
Say about 2 weeks, so that that could encompass for 3 weeks. It could be or mid-December.
And Adam Tuss is probably waiting for me back where we're starting.
So I had a question about both ends of it. So we're driving towards the Garrisonville one. One thing that's been brought up is, well, obviously we understand they have to end somewhere, but during the height of those summer months, are there going to be huge backups when people are trying to head down to Virginia Beach in North Carolina at that Garrisonville Road?
At the southern terminus?
Yeah, the southern terminus.
Well, one of the things we have to use to keep traffic moving is that dynamic price. So, we can adjust that as we need to ensure that there aren't delays that come up into the 95 express lane. So what that means for the drivers is that on those days where there is that high demand and people want to take it to the terminus, they might see a higher toll price to go all the way to that terminus, which is what we have to do to keep everything moving in the 95 express lanes.
So conceivably during the summer or particularly busy getaways where a lot of people are headed south, we may, I'm not saying we will, we may see some higher prices because of that extra traffic headed down south all the way down towards Richmond that essentially takes it to Garrisonville Road.
Oh, it's all based on demand. And yeah, exactly. When you have